Hello, it is Thursday, and tomorrow is a holiday. It is May 1st, so it's Labor Day, at least in this part of the world. And so I won't have class today. I'm going to have an assignment, which my professor hasn't posted yet. But I was doing another assignment just now, and like halfway through it, so I was like, you know what, I need a break because I felt like this is the whole mysteries. Shopper thing, like it was just very taxing because it is like 150 something questions for each store that I visited, so I have to kind of like answer everything. And basically I was kind of like getting very tired towards the end of it. I was getting to a point where I was like, you know what, like I don't so basically what I'm trying to say is that right now it feels like I'm at the same point where, like, you know what, I have to take a break. Otherwise, like, everything just feels too tiring and also too much of the same, and throw with a fresh eyes, basically. So I'm gonna record this video and then I do that. So this dress I'm wearing right now, it is new. I haven't really, I don't really need a new dress, but I got this in the mystery shopper thing, so I was like, yeah, like, good price. So it was basically, free. The only thing about this dress is that, like, it is very open here in the back, so I can't really wear a bra, and that kind of like tickles one of my insecurities. Like I feel like my breasts, like, they're a little too saggy, and when I'm wearing this top, this dress, I can wear it, so I think it could be good in terms of like me growing a little bit more confident. Also, something else I wanted to talk about is the fact that ever since I mentioned the mugging yesterday in this video, I have been getting a lot of like ads. They are for insurance for your phone and all that. So kind of like an interesting. It's not surprising. This happens all the time. But I was like, I don't think I couldn't remember the last time in which it has been so blatant, so obvious. There's that. But anyways, today's video is going to be a little different. You can see my laptop is right here because something that happened with like my class yesterday kind of like made me realize that I was still kind of like being moved about based on what some people would think of me, and I kind of want to break that. So basically today I'm going to do a little deep dive into astrology. I'm an atheist, so I don't really believe in anything, and before I was an atheist I was raised Christian, so like you usually look at astrology as this thing that is not true, which I think is very rich coming from Christians, because like look at all the things they believe in. And then this is pretty much where I draw the line. And also when it comes to like trauma that I have a lot of religious trauma. No person has traumatized me using astrology ever, so there's that. So anyways, but basically what I noticed is that I kind of like still had that animosity in me of like thinking of feeling the urge to say, oh, I don't believe in it, like kind of that, and made me realize like, why am I like this? And then I was like, okay, I care too much about what people think about what they have to say, and I'm kind of done with that. So I'm going to be doing a deep dive into not astrology as a whole, because there's a lot, but like specifically my sign, which is Scorpio, and I'm going to kind of like learn a little bit of it. I know like kind of like the bare minimum, because interactions I had with people, like it has been kind of like brought forth. But I don't know much. What I've heard from my interactions with other people is that it's a very sexual sign. It is very intense, very passionate, and stubborn, maybe, I don't know, but like, so yeah, very superficial thing. But yeah, so I decided to kind of like put this out there into the open, because why do I care? And I don't want to care, like I just want to live my life. So what if people judge me? It's not my business. It's nothing to do with me, and I don't want to have people that have that hold over me. So here we go. I started with Scorpio meaning, and then general view from they use AI for this, but so maybe it's wrong, but it is the 8th sign of the zodiac. It goes from October 23rd to November 21st. No, November 21st is my birthday. So for example, and I have a brother. He's 3 years older than me, but he was also born on November 21st. And basically he says that like he feels that because it's kind of like on the cusp, I think it's Sagittarius is the next one, so I think that he identifies with like both signs. So there's that. Also I've had people do the mapping that they do. And I know that my main thing is Scorpius, and then the second one is Leo, and the third one is Scorpius. So it's, you know, 2 Scorpio and 1 Leo. I think that each of this like represents, you know, something. I don't know exactly what, but yeah, let's wait and see. It is a water sign, which I also don't know what it means. Let me just click it here. Like this could be what does it mean to be a water sign? Water sign. We went to Wikipedia and okay, here, water signs. What does that mean? It's saying that polarity divides in half. Polarity. Okay, this is not what I want. Let's keep going. And is defined by intensity, passion, and secrecy. Ooh. Scorpios are often described as deeply emotional, intuitive, and according to CoStar, is strategic. I mean, I would like to believe that I'm strategic, but like, am I? Two of those things. Because the thing about, you know, I guess like finding, you know, not finding zodiac because it's kind of like defined by your birth, but it's just like figuring out, you know, positive things that you can find there and kind of like aligning yourself with those positive traits. So I don't know. I think that I'm deeply emotional. I can very deeply feel things. And I think I was talking about this the other day. I don't also, you know, something that is interesting, like I know nothing about astrology, and yet if you ask me what is the best sign, I'll say that it's no Scorpion because it's mine. So I don't know. So it's kind of like interesting, you know, like I have this affinity of like, yeah, this is the best one, even though I don't know much. But yeah, so both intuitive and strategic are positive things that I would like to associate with myself. But you know, I don't know, I think that sometimes like the more strategic, you know, part of me that I can find is when I'm writing, and even then like it is kind of flawed. You know, there's that. Am I passionate? I feel like sometimes I struggle with finding passion for things, although at the same time like there are some things that I find myself to be way too passionate about. You know, I want to be kind of like a little bit more neutral, but that's not where I am at. But you know, like nothing wrong with that. And so key aspects of Scorpio, personality traits. Astrology zodiac signs lists key traits as resourceful, brave, and passionate, but also potentially jealous and secretive. They are also known for being loyal friends and intensely focused. So this is Noah from Quora. You know, somebody was asking about astrology on Quora. Interesting. I don't know about loyalty. You know, like I'm very loyal to myself, which means that I will kind of like do whatever I think is the best for me, and point in time. But yeah, I'm also I don't know. Like I think that some of these words like they're using, like I need more. I need more interpersonal relationships for me to assess it properly. But you know, it is. So far so good. Symbolism represented by the scorpion, often associated with the myth of Orion, representing transformation, power, and the ability to strike when least expected. I do like this thing because I do have a scorpion tattoo. It's not a Scorpio tattoo. See, once again, I feel the need to kind of like justify. And this is one of those things like astrology kind of like made me not want to get this tattoo for the longest time, because for me this represents, same way as they're saying, strength. Scorpions are, you know, small, but they can kill. They're kind of like potent. And then ever since I had that trauma when I was 13, in which I was physically overpowered, I kind of like, I looked down at myself for, you know, like being kind of like weak physically, and also like emotionally, mentally, all of that. But you know, it was, you know, something that I kind of so I don't know, I think I found solace in the idea that I was a scorpion, you know, like that I was, you know, like a scorpion. So you know, that was one of the first tattoos that I kind of like wanted to get, but it was, you know, I think I got it in like 2024. So, and I probably first had an idea of getting it when I was like, what, 14, 15, you know, 2012, 2013. So yeah, so basically just another example of like, why do I care about what people, you know, think, but I still do. So, you know, kind of like working on that basically. So it's associated with Orion. So transformation is new. I don't know if I ever made the kind of like association between kind of like transformation and but like it is important, because also, you know, for you to transform, for you to change, And also the ability to strike when least expected. Like I guess I would want that for me. You know, like that kind of like goes back to the whole strategic element of this. Well, there's that. So symbolism represented by the scorpion. I already read this. Elements and rulers. It is a fixed water sign, traditionally ruled by Mars and modernly by Pluto. Okay. Synonyms, related terms. Scorpius, the constellation / astronomical name. Scorpion, water sign. So usage examples. As a Scorpio, she's incredibly loyal but keeps her private life very guarded. His birthday is in November, so his star sign is Scorpio. I don't know why we have examples of sentences here, but I'm not sure. Other meanings. Scorpius is the constellation. History technology refers to a Roman artillery weapon, or as noted on the Wikipedia, the code name for Xbox One X console. Okay, didn't know that. But I do find the thing of like, you know, they're kind of like being guarded. I think I associate that more with trauma. You know, I think these days I'm pretty, you know, open to kind of like saying things. Sometimes, you know, I think I mentioned this. Man, even, you know, I was a little too open. So I don't know. I wanted to see those corporate things, but I don't know where else to go. I Google it, and there's a lot of like Merriam-Webster, Cambridge, they're defining it, Collins Dictionary, Cambridge Dictionary, CoStar. Okay, they mentioned CoStar, so let's, you know, see what they have to say about this. So it is the Scorpion, October. Okay, we already know this. So it is fixed, you know, fixed water sign. I don't know what that means, but you know, last time I tried to figure it out, like it didn't really work. So primary emotion is betrayal. Okay, what does that mean? That the primary emotion, like, do you fear betrayal? I don't know. I feel like I don't trust people enough to get to a point where like I can really fear betrayal. So looks cool in a leather jacket. Okay, this does not seem to be kind of like a professional website. Okay with uncomfortable silence. I guess I am. Can't be sure if they're serious or joking. I will say that I think there is this word in Portuguese. It's called debochado or debochada, you know, for feminine, and it basically kind of like means that, you know, you don't take things seriously. And I have been referred to that. It's, you know, like before, I kind of like struggled at different points with kind of like being, you know, like with being kind of like serious in certain situations, but at the same time, like, there were other situations where I was, you know, taking things way too seriously. So I don't know. Eyes that look into your soul. Mysterious. So famous Scorpios, I don't care. Best careers, con artists. Con artists, what? Puppet master, brooding protagonist, poster guide, cult leader. I would like to be a cult leader. That sounds bad. But anyways, about Scorpio. What is the personality of a Scorpio? A Scorpio's personality is a chasm of infinite complexity, or at least how they project themselves. They are difficult people to get to know because they are psychological trapdoors. Interesting. I like this metaphor, psychological trapdoor. And I think this pretty much means that, okay, so they kind of like project themselves being very complex. You know, I like to think that I'm a complex person, but I think like everybody is complex in their own way. So it's not like, because I feel like even if there's something about a person that you can kind of like very easily spot, identify at a point in time, there are so many other areas, you know, and kind of like figuring people out, it can sometimes lead to you thinking that that person isn't complex. But what happens is just like you've kind of like cracked the code, you figure out like what the person is about, so you can kind of like tell what they're gonna do, and how they think, and all of that. I think I need my water bottle. So I don't know, because that's something. I mean, I think with you know, astrology, the things are kind of like very general, so that, you know, people can, you know, find so that they can find where was I? Okay. So I kind of lost my train of thought. Fuck. Yeah, so like, oh yeah, so it's very it's kind of like it's general, so, you know, people can spot those traits onto themselves. You know, it's kind of like an interesting thing. So I don't think that necessarily like reading something and it's identifying yourself with that, relating to it necessarily means that you're being fooled. It's just that you're kind of like focusing on certain traits. And also like from what I've learned recently, astrology is not just about like the one thing. Like each of those, there are different houses, I believe is what it's called, and they all kind of like indicate like how an area of your life is going to proceed. So it's not just, I don't know, like it's not as straightforward as I once thought it was. So yeah, I think that, and I don't think that this makes me feel a little more confident when people like they get very invested, because it's not just like this one thing. There's like a lot of like things. And like I will say that I don't think that for the most part I would call myself a psychological trapdoor, because I think that I've been pretty open. At least it maybe could be a trapdoor, but like it's a trapdoor that is open. Like it's kind of like a hatch, and you can kind of like see inside. And but it's like there's like a lot of different things inside, and I've already taken out like a lot of them. So some things are very straightforward, very clear, but then there are some that are very how do I put it? Some they're still deep down, and kind of like getting them out is going to take time and effort. But I will say that I'm constantly seeing change. So I think this week, like this past week, I've seen kind of like myself come to some realizations, some situations where I feel like I'm where I feel like I removed something from inside, and I'm in a kind of like better I'm better equipped to kind of like just exist with that. So Scorpios socialize from behind a double-sided mirror, always scanning, reading you while you can only see your reflection. Once again, I think that I've been pretty open and straightforward lately. I feel like this described me when I was a teen and like in my early adult years, when I had a lot of trauma that prevented me from fully engaging with people and kind of like just replicate whatever they were giving me. So if they're kind of like throwing some kindness at my way, I'm throwing some kindness their way. If they're throwing kind of like this friendliness, kind of like this convivial interaction, like I'm kind of like doing the same. But yeah, so I feel like today is not so much how I am these days, but it is still it's still something, like it is still I feel like that's my tendency, but I don't think that this is the tendency because of trauma. But you could argue that like the way you respond to trauma is very inherent to you as a person. So to people, they can go through the same thing and they will respond to it in different ways. So there is a very personal element to it. There's a whole like nature versus nurture thing to be said. I usually believe that nurture is kind of like the bigger deal. But there are some things that they're kind of like nature. There's we have some tendencies that we kind of like were born with, and it doesn't matter in whatever circumstance you were born in, like that is kind of like inherent to you. They prefer to be the people asking the questions, removing your skin with the perceptive scalpel, and taking inventory of repulsing viscera. I like this imagery. I don't know if this is so much. I relate to this whenever, I think I mentioned this past few days, that there were points where I was very kind of like drawn to confrontation, and then I was borderline like mean when I was dealing with people. And I think that this is part of that. I think there are moments where I really feel the need to do that, specifically so that I can kind of like find some reasoning, because sometimes like things don't make sense, and I kind of like I need them to make some sense for me to be able to move on. And sometimes, yeah. So I wouldn't say I feel like I'm a pretty friendly person these days. It's not that I was rude before, but I'm kind of like I'm more intrigued and interested in people than I used to be. So I see a lot more of them. I see a lot more of people, and I'm kind of like interested. So like I'm asking questions, and while I think that for so long like I was kind of like I was a very hard person to interact with, because I was giving you nothing and then you give me something, and then I was not that I wouldn't respond, like I would reply to things being said, but I was very I was just giving you, it was just very superficial basically. They subtly probe and push your pressure points so they can get the answer they're seeking. Scorpios are keenly aware of power, its flows and the positions within its matrix. I will say that the power one, like being interested, like it also goes back hand in hand with like my trauma. But as I've already said, sometimes like the way you respond to trauma is kind of like that, like what I think of who you are not saying that I have power, but I will say that I am aware of, you know, like the structure. So I kind of like, I do agree with this. But I don't know. I think that it comes from like insecurity, fears, and traumas. You know, like that is kind of like the main thing that is moving my head. You know, like whenever I find myself in a situation, I'm kind of like grasping at straws to be the kind of like the person with, you know, the upper hand. You know, with the person who has the power. I would say that in practice, it's very it's not uncommon for me to not be that person, and for me to have the kind of like the urge or the need to kind of like to justify myself. I look at my eyeliner. One is like pointed downwards, and the other is pointing kind of like upwards. It was not intentional, but you know what? I'm liking this look. I'm owning it. You know, like this was intentional, guys. But I will say that being kind of like super aware, hyper aware of, you know, where is the power is coming from is something that comes from trauma and from insecurities. So I know it's one of those things that's like, okay, life changed me, you know, like these things happening, they changed me, they changed the way that I saw the world. So I'm kind of stuck in this limbo where I'm trying to grasp, you know, feel like I'm in control of something. And that's pretty much where power, you know, entered it. But I don't know, I feel like I'm not interested enough in people. I mean, this is changing. I'm becoming increasingly more engaged with people, but for so long I really think that wasn't really the case. So I wasn't really doing that, you know. I wasn't really you know, what am I seeking? You know, I'm seeking validation, I'm seeking control, I'm seeking, you know, a reality in which I can kind of like affirm myself, a reality in which like I'm not, you know, like I'm not the things I fear that I am, you know, fear because of the traumas I have. Despite their ability to be popular, that is not me. There's something very lonely about Scorpios. Once again, I would say that this is not so much the case for me these days. When I was a kid, okay, so I'm realizing that we're going to talk a lot about trauma, so I'm going to repeat myself a lot because, you know, my trauma was pretty much what led, and not only like the specific one from when I was 13. I think that the way that I was also taught to be a different person than who I was, and how I was taught that the way that I was wrong, you know, and there was something that I needed to fix. I think that that's also playing a role, but ultimately there's not. I don't know, like I'm okay. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. I'm okay today. I didn't used to be. So the way that I would like do things was, you know, very chaotic because I was desperately, as I said, I was grasping at straws, trying to like find, you know, to be able to affirm myself in a way that made me kind of, you know, I don't know. Okay, so they have a ruthless view of the world. I think so. Like I'm told, you know, often enough that I need to kind of like expect more from things, you know, like not be so hopeless about, you know, like the way that the world works. And I think that I'm succeeding at that, at least compared to like how I used to be. But you know, it is still something. Eat or be eaten. Their knowledge of other people's internal structure gives them the edge over the competition. I don't know about that. I don't really feel like I have any edge over any competition these days. I think that, you know, like it's been like the ego death, you know, this past few weeks. I think like anything that I thought about myself, for example, regarding my writing, like I was like, okay, I'm doing something here, you know, I'm saying something. It's been very much scaled back. I'm like, yeah, I'm not really saying anything. Like this is not particularly good. It's not particularly great. Naturally, I might be being a little pessimistic, but it is something worth considering. Anyways. So I would like to have an edge over the competition. And I will say that sometimes, like, not in terms of like competition, but I do seem to get an idea of, you know, why people are doing what they are doing. For example, I see this a lot with me, with my brother. When he's doing things, when he's saying things, I'm kind of like, and things like I have a good notion of like what he's like and all that, but sometimes I notice that I'm just projecting what I would do, you know, in its place, and not everybody's like me, you know, and we do have a lot of like similar things, and there are things we have in common. So I have like a good, you know, understanding of what it was, or what, you know, like these things are. But I don't know, I think sometimes you're just projecting. You may think that you're good at reading people, but you're not. You're just kind of like, you're reading them based on who you are, you know, and that's pretty much where you have your answers. And you know, those answers, they could be right, but they could also be wrong. you know, like it's kind of hard to tell, particularly because I don't have like that many deep interactions with people. I don't have like that many people in my life. I have more than I used to, so you know, growth. Happy about that, but it's still it is something to kind of like said, okay, I'm like the orange here, the blue, like it's really contrasting really nicely, you know, complementary colors. They know how to play people against each other. I will say that so far, everything I've read here, it has been something that has appealed to me, you know, to my ego. I don't necessarily look at it and feel like this is me, but I feel like this is who I wanted to be. This is, you know, like the people whose company I want. You know, not whose company I want, because I want to be like the one doing it. But you know, I'm in good company, basically. It's kind of like the feeling. And they know how to be people. And every human interaction is a meeting of opposing powerful forces. This kind of like reads a lot, like how I was when I was a teenager and a young adult. I know I've said this a lot, but it is true. Every kind of like interaction was, you know, kind of like a battle that I had to want to win, you know, and that if I didn't win, like that just really set me on a spiral. A clashing of wants and needs where somebody wins and somebody loses, pretty much what I just said. They're forthcoming and evasive at the same time. Okay, I will say that this is kind of like true to me, you know, like this is kind of like how I am a lot of times. Like I will be very forthcoming with information, but like the information itself is not going to mean that much. So for example, I was giving you the example yesterday, you know, my video yesterday, or the day before. Like I was talking about how this person kind of like came to talk to me as I was getting, you know, to the mall, and they had questions, and I basically answered them. You know, I think that what I was saying yesterday is that I kind of like I said too many things. I could cut the conversation if I had just said something, which is still something I'm interested in, but I said a lot, but I also kind of like said nothing, you know, like I said about what I was going to do, but I didn't really give any real information about myself and my life and the things I do and how I do them, which, you know, is good. You know, as a stranger, you don't want to give a stranger too much information about yourself, but it's kind of like it's I do kind of like see this happening with me. I'm very forthcoming about a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that I'm saying something, you know, I'm digging deeper, you know, into myself for me to answer. Depending on the situation is beneficial. They are blunt, but not without tact. I would like to have more tact. You know, I think that I'm not the worst person when it comes to tact, to be completely honest. I think I do better than like a lot of other people, but sometimes I feel like the way I approach things, you know, is a little abrasive. You know, I wish it was less. So there's that. So, and also, like, am I blunt? In general, yes, but there's also like something I've been learning lately is to kind of like not engage with things and people. So, you know, like I've been taking a step back lately from kind of like saying things and stuff. So I'm changing, you know, but I will say that, you know, bluntness, sure, they're intentional about the information they reveal, and let me say, I think so, because it also depends on the context, to be completely honest. For example, like in this journal, I usually am very earnest about a lot of things that I think, the way I feel, and all that. But you know, I wouldn't share the same earnestness if I'm talking to a stranger. I'll still be forthcoming, as I said, but it you know, like I don't know, but I do think that there is intention in the way that in the things that I say, even when I'm kind of like blunt, even when I'm kind of like saying too much. There's still things that I don't know. I think that I'm careful, which is kind of like a good thing, which is something that I also think I have to train for me to get to this point, because I feel like when I was younger, I might be sharing too much in a way that could be kind of dangerous, you know, saying too much to people, although I was still hiding. I mean, I think I was hiding, like, you know, for example, when I thought about certain things, about my belief systems, about, you know, like the things that compose my psyche, but, you know, things have to do with like what I did, what I wanted. I think I was more forthcoming, so there's that. They're not liars, they don't spread lies, but they're masters of opening windows on certain truths while concealing others behind heavy curtains. Very poetic, the way that it is being written. I like it. I mean, I kind of like am a liar sometimes. I mean, I mentioned yesterday that I wanted to be more of a liar, specifically because I wanted to kind of like, you know, cut some conversations short, you know, like I was kind of okay with like just, you know, lack of interaction in some cases. So I guess I could say that they're masters of opening windows on certain truths while concealing others behind heavy curtains. I think this was written more simply, less metaphorically. I will probably relate to this more because like I do question like how intentional is the way I say things, because sometimes I just really don't care, so I'm just saying whatever. So I don't really feel like a master of like telling the truth or concealing lies when I'm like that. It just feels like I don't know, this is mostly like I want to be this person, but am I this person? What are Scorpios afraid of? Oh, this is interesting. I want to see more of this because this is going to match my fears. Scorpios are afraid of most things other people fear. Not darkness, not pain, not death. They comfort these truths. They confront these truths head on. I will say that I'm not scared of the dark, which is kind of like a normal adult thing for to not be scared of. Scared of pain. I'm not scared of pain, but like I hate it. I get hate it the entire of my being. Like whenever I'm in pain, like I just do anything and everything I can do to make it stop. And this means sometimes I compromise whatever it is that I'm doing, because like whenever pain comes to kind of like enters the chat, as people say, I just really tackle it. Not death. Generally speaking, I think historically I haven't really feared death, but like in a really negative way, in a way, like pretty much meant that I was like, I'm gonna do it, like there were the tendencies. While right now, I wouldn't say that I'm afraid of death, but like if I were to die right now, like there are things that I wish I had done, but I don't think it would, because one of my characters dies, and that character is like really kind of like reevaluating their life and like what they did, what they didn't do, and I don't know if I would be like this at the very end. But so I don't fear death, but I also don't want to die, which is good. At least for me, given my context. Maybe some people could benefit from fearing death. Not the case for me. Instead of instilling fear, this acknowledgement of darkness is the whetstone that hones their appreciation for life. I guess so. Yeah, like I had no notes, don't have anything to say about this one. Scorpios teeter on the fine edge of the unknowable. Life is more bearable that way. Is it though? I do like what is not known, because it does offer a lot of possibilities. But I don't know if I would say that I teeter on the fine edge of the unknowable. Yeah, I have no notes, not because I don't know, I don't think this applies to me, basically. But also I don't think that this doesn't apply to me. Life is more bearable that way, in a certain way, I guess. I can see that. Don't know if this is me though. Scorpios do fear vulnerability because they're scared of being known. Oh yeah, like this is a good one. This is something that I don't fear so much these days. I mean, there are exceptions. There are still things I'm like ashamed and embarrassed of saying. I gave an example yesterday of something I didn't say because I was kind of like worried about, I was embarrassed about it, and I was still figuring out like what I was going to do. But basically what I'm trying to say is that vulnerability is something that I used to think I didn't fear, but then I realized that I did fear it. I think it was when I was 17 and I was doing that EMDR therapy. Like I realized like, oh yeah, there's a lot of things that I hate about, I cannot really be vulnerable right now. So it kind of like it stayed with me, and then to kind of like compensate for that, I would be very vulnerable about some things. But the whole takeaway is that like the things I said, somebody else would look at them and be like, this is you being vulnerable, but they were not vulnerable to me. Like to me, like it was basically a nothing burger. Like I don't mind saying those things. It's not something that is vulnerable to me. So I will say that to this day, like vulnerability is something that I do fear. There's just I usually in these videos, they're my journal, so I'm just saying basically everything. But there's like a handful of things that I can think of that I never really talk about because it will make me feel too vulnerable. So there's some truth here. Darkness can be a hiding place. And this is kind of like seems the beginning of like a bad poetry, but I do see this. I do see how I've been talking about how I want to be more honest with myself, because I've been kind of like lying to myself by omission or by kind of like focusing on something else. So they did say something about Scorpios in that at some point, and I don't necessarily see that with other people, but I do see it with myself right now. I do think that there's something here. So darkness can be a hiding place, pain can be an excuse not to trust. oh, this is also interesting, because I still feel sometimes like there are things in my head that I really spell them out for myself when I'm doing them. So we're kind of like really clear on what's happening and why it is that it is happening. And then there are some situations where, there are some situations where, like, things just happen and I don't really have an answer, and it isn't until like much later that I figure out, like, okay, like this is pretty much what's happening, this is pretty much what I was struggling with, and that's totally fine. Like that was something that was kind of like happening. And because but usually, like, only when I'm kind of like over that period of time can I look back and feel this way. Usually, like, it takes that thing no longer hurting. But I do like the sentence, pain can be an excuse not to trust, because I think that this really summarizes my interactions with people when I was a teenager and a young adult, because I was very much rejecting interactions and people. I didn't really want that to be the case. I didn't want like those interactions, but basically and what's happening is that, like, I was basing that whole situation on past situations, on a situation where I trusted somebody and all I got in return was pain and trauma, and it really fucked up my life. So I don't want that again. Even if you don't necessarily fear that person, those people, they would do the thing to you that was previously done. So it is kind of like an excuse. So I do see some truth here. When they open up, it gives other people power over them. Oh, this is also something that kind of like, I guess, not so much, because I care way less these days. Like, I'm just, I have control over me, and I don't think that, any truths that I'm sharing, they kind of like give anybody a hold over me. But it is something that I see myself when I was younger thinking, kind of like giving people power over you, and I really didn't want that. Because like, it made me feel insecure, not only insecure but like unsafe as well, based on experiences that I had. Oh yeah, by the way, I got a temporary tattoo. It's a little bunny. I went to this very famous department store, and they had like some leftover eggs from Easter, and they were all $1.99. So I got all the ones that they had, and they came with like this little temporary tattoo, and I got it here, and it's really cool. It's already pretty it's already a mess, but it's kind of like satiating my need for this tattoo, because my next one is going to be August, and today is the 30th of April, so there is May, June, and July, 3 more months, and I can't wait, basically. Okay, so Scorpios need to be in control. Control over themselves and others is an illusion to make them feel secure in an otherwise uncertain world. No notes, this is very true. Also very kind of like, general thing that people fear. But really, it is true nonetheless. I feel like this whole, Scorpio thing so far really kind of like bringing me back to when I was a teenager and a young adult, when I was struggling with myself because of the traumas that I had, not so much these days. So what is Scorpio's favorite color? Scorpio's favorite color is irrelevant. Everything is the same color in the dark. Okay, actually, my favorite color is pink. It has always been the case. It's never really changed. Okay, so Scorpio in sex, love, and romance. This is one that I think that is interesting, because basically, like, like the one thing that I knew about Scorpios based on my interactions with people throughout the years is that there's a very sexual element, to Scorpios, and it's interesting because, like, when I'm manic, I feel like that is very true, but also because I had like that trauma when I was 13, and it has to do, it was a sexual thing, and basically what happened is that I had this kind of like period of repose where I rejected any kind of like touch, emotional, physical, and then I went to the other side of that, which was hypersexuality. So I feel like if I had read this when I was, like 23, for example, or 23, I think that is a good middle ground, because 18, I was still learning, I was still kind of like in the repose age, and right now I'm kind of like in the middle, but I was repose, it was hyper, and then it was where I am at right now, which is healthy and safe. So I think 23 was a good middle point, and I think that 23, this would pretty much define me. It would be something that I'll be like, oh yeah, that is the case. So anyways, Scorpio sex, love, and romance. This is the most relevant to Scorpio's Scorpio Venus and Mars. Those Scorpio suns may identify with some traits. Am I a Scorpio sun? Okay, I'm gonna check. Scorpio sun. Okay, so I am a Scorpio sun, which pretty much I just Googled it, and it says that having, it's in Portuguese this time around, having a sun in Scorpio, and then it says the birthday day, indicates an intense, profound, and magnetic personality. I would love to have magnetic personality. That has never been the case. I'm not a particularly popular person, but I would love to be. I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get something out of it. It's also interesting because the thing that I've been wanting to get out of situations lately is tattoos. I know I just mentioned that, but I just really wish somebody would kind of like stop me in the street and be like, I'm gonna give you 100, whatever, if you answer this, because then it would be like 100, whatever, closer to getting a tattoo. Yeah, so anyways, this sign is a water sign and is known for loyalty, acute intuition, and transformation, focus on transformation, power, and mystery. Scorpios, they seek the true, absolute truth and avoid superficiality in their relations. Let's wait and see. So how should it seduce? Oh, what is my Scorpio Venus? How do I know? Oh, I maybe should do like an astral map with what my sun is, because I don't know. I only know that it is Scorpio, Leo, and Scorpio. So, but yeah, how to seduce a Scorpio? Okay, wear an outfit that makes you look innocent. Oh, I hate this. Oh no. Pair with slightly smudged eyeliner so they can tell you are a little unhinged under the surface. Okay, I hate this. This is awful. No, I don't want to know this. Dim the lights, put on a mournful Johnny Mitchell, I don't know who Johnny Mitchell is, sorry, song, and ask them very seriously what the deep sphere is. Yeah, I don't know if I would like that. Just ask me what my deepest fear is. I don't think that's very conductive to kind of like what they want to happen next. But anyways, suggest that this has something to do with their childhood. Okay, it does have to do with my childhood, so they're onto something here. If they're quick to tell you what that they love you, it's a test. Don't say it back until you're sure you both mean it. Not a test I would ever, think of imposing on anybody, particularly because I don't want any love to you to be kind of like anywhere near, to be completely honest. Like, it's just a physical thing. Let's keep it physical. Let's not, okay. So I guess like that this one, there is some truth. I don't think I would use this as a test, but there's something here. Do Scorpios fall in love quickly? Scorpios' ability to be direct and establish immediate intimacy causes some people to fall for them quickly, but it takes them a while to open themselves up to somebody enough to talk enough to really fall in love. Oh, this is an interesting one, because I have never, been in love. I've never fallen in love with anyone, despite, as I said, like my things are mostly more physical, but do I fall? So I don't know. I actually have like no idea what it would take for me to fall in love. I don't personally want to be completely honest, but it is what it is. Love also means partially relinquishing some self-control, and it's especially hard for Scorpio. I think it's especially hard for everybody, but I would say that I do relate to this particular sentence. When they do let someone in, they fall in love completely. Once again, I have no idea. I've never got even close to being in love. But it's not something I'm against. I think when I was younger I was like, yeah, I don't want to have that experience. These days I'm like, you know what, like that is such a common experience. You go and you look at music, for example, and it's just like so much about love everywhere, and a part of me kind of like wants to see what that would be like. But and it's been like a couple of years since I've been kind of like open, but like nothing really happened, and that maybe that is a sign that is just not my thing. When they do listen, they can be fiercely possessive. I hope I'm not possessive. I don't want to like be a jealous person. I don't like this. Scorpios want to learn everything about you. They want to be around you as much as possible and can get attached scarily fast. Okay, I don't relate to this, but once again, it's not an experience I've had, so I'll have to experience that for me to know if like this is me or not. Okay, so how do Scorpios flirt? Scorpio's flirtatiousness is extreme enough to be considered fatal. Okay, look at me, everybody. Fatal. Uh, Anyways, it's like watching two deadly snakes intertwine, a volcano erupting. The language is very evocative, and I think it is making it harder for me to relate to this, to be completely honest. Their uninhibited flirtatiousness is not about making friends. They flirt with others to take control of the situation and assert dominance. I will say this does remind me of when I was younger. A lot of my sexual escapades, they were not really about, you know, sex and pleasure. They were very much more about me being able to kind of like attain some type of control over, you know, like my life and over people. So I do relate to this. Scorpios are the type to whisper in your ear, "I see you looking," if they catch you staring, and then smile wickedly. What they say? "I see you looking." sorry, but anyways, that is. I don't know. I'm pretty straightforward, but I don't think I'm this bold. You know, I usually just, you know, throw signs, just like I'm interested, and if the other person is interested, then, you know, we can do something. But yeah, anyways, Scorpios don't make small talk. I do relate to that. I don't like making small talk. I think that it touches me to kind of like a conversation or a situation for longer than it needs to be. So there's that. They catch you staring. Okay, Scorpios don't make small talk. They stare into your eyes and say, "I know you're feeling something." It feels creepy, you know, like this. This is the type of thing that, like, if it comes from somebody you are interested in, like, you know, it works. But if it comes from somebody who you're not into, like, this is just like very icky. I don't know if I love this. Scorpios don't say "I like you" to get you to like them. They don't want to play nice. They say exactly what they mean, exactly how they mean it. I guess so, but like the implication here is that they're very bold, and like I don't know if that's what the message I'm trying to convey most of the time, but yeah. So I read that. I don't know if is this very enlightening. Am I trying to understand better my sign right now? Okay, so what are Scorpios attracted to? Scorpios are attracted to what's under the surface. They want to be with someone who pushes their boundaries, who brings out the most intense desires and most profound fears. I guess so. You know, I'm looking at my head, it's nothing that's really saying that, you know, I would post that. I don't think that boundary pushing is something that I'm okay with these days. When I was younger, I don't think it would really work for me. You know, I have very set boundaries, and then, you know, like, try anything that challenged them, you know, it just got me to pull back. But, you know, these days, I'm trying to figure things out, so, you know, it makes sense. Now, the most intense desires, it is something that but once again, like, it's something that I feel like everybody, you know, wants to have their most intense desires satisfied, you know, or be able to kind of like operate, you know, under that kind of like guise. So I don't know how exclusive this is. So it is true. And my most profound fears, I will say that, you know, when you're dealing with fears and you get to the other side where you have been able to kind of like overcome that, like, it feels really good. There's this kick. So, you know, I think that that is also something that would be kind of interesting. So intrigue, passion, lust, the need for completion. Okay, I will say the need for completion is something that I kind of struggle with. I really need, you know, completion. So intrigue, passion, lust. I don't know, I can be very intense about things that I like, but I never really felt intensely about people. You know, like, people I like, I don't think I have like those intense feelings, you know. But yeah, so a darkly seductive energy. Am I seducing you? Is it a dark seduction? I don't know. But I feel like this is very much like wish fulfilling. Like, this is somebody, like, they want to hear it this way to kind of like be able to be like, yeah, this is me. It is kind of like appealing to your ego. So I don't know, but I will say that I think that as far as like everything that's been said so far, like, this is something that I 100% have, you know, thought about before, you know, in terms of like, you know, me and being. But, you know, I don't know if like I'm like pursuing this dark energy. It's more something about control, you know. So I want to be perceived in a certain way, but it's always kind of like, you know, it kind of like gets to a point where there's a barrier, which is, you know, reality. So I can't really fully be like, I am dark and seductive, you know. It's not really my vibe. But you know, I guess I wish it were. I scream for projection. Okay, pretty much what I was saying. Enigmatic intensity, the forbidden and the unknown. Sure. I don't know. I feel this was what I meant. That if I had kind of like read this when I was like 23, I would probably be much more like, no, that's it. That is it. They have the ability to see past the mask of pretense, to the soul of desire, and they look for people who can see and appreciate this part of them. I don't know. Am I looking for somebody who will make me? Is that? I don't know. I'm good as I am, but I would like to try it. You know, as I said, it would be something interesting to kind of like experience, maybe. Okay, so Scorpios are into things that are real. They're into people who are not afraid to say what they mean. Sure. No, but I do think, what if what they mean is something directly against them? You know, like, would I be fine with that as well? You know, that is the question. Scorpios are not interested in anything that doesn't involve the risk of being completely destroyed. They want to have as many traumatic experiences as possible, because the absence of friction is kind of subtle death. I would say that this is something that if I was once again 23, I would say like 100% the case. I need some friction, I need confrontation, but like these days I'm much more about my peace of mind. So, you know, I don't want friction. I mean, I think in this context, friction could be fun, it could be kind of like tantalizing, but in general, like in my life, like, no, I want peace. You know, I want peace, and I genuinely mean it, because technically I've been able to, you know, I've been saying this, that I wanted peace for the longest time, but like that was not 100% true, because basically there were so many different points in time. I was very much kind of like looking forward to the confrontation, you know, all because, you know, it made me feel better about myself. But even though Scorpios are attracted to passion, they are also repelled by that. They want to desire things, but they don't want to be ruled by their desires. This is why they will sometimes date people who are the exact opposite of what they claim to want. Once again, not an experience I have, but it makes sense, I guess. But I will say that the idea of passion is something that like based not necessarily on romance and sex, but like in other interests and things that have appealed to me in my lifetime. I was very much mortified, you know, by how much mortified and threatened by how much I've cared about certain things, you know, talking about, you know, as I said, like fandoms have been part of, for example, how much like I was consuming the thing, but I never really participated actively in the group, because that was, for me, like that was a lot of commitment and I wasn't ready for it. So I do see this. How do you know a Scorpio likes you? Scorpios are silent assassins. You know, everything that I'm reading, I'm like, yes. Even though I don't think it's me, but no, it's about staying here. They don't immediately make their feelings known. First, they give you a venomous, penetrating look. Venomous, penetrating look. I don't know how to give a venomous, penetrating look. Let me just try. Sorry, okay. Scorpios want to feel you out. They will try and test your character. Once you determine that you're trustworthy, they will give you a second look, this time with slightly dilated pupils. Sorry, I can't say the word. But yeah, I feel like this is something that I don't have, because as I said, like I don't have any experience with, like, you know, like I've never really been interested in romance or anything like that, so my experience is more on the physical part, and usually like I kind of like, I'm very easy to, I think like willingness is like the number one thing that I'm thinking of, but I don't know if maybe we were talking about, you know, romance, and you know, I would find out that like this is true. Don't know. Scorpio will pursue you with the same intensity they used to pursue their enemies. This is hot, actually. They will uncover the deepest secrets, and they will expose you. They will impress you with their insight and wit. Scorpios seduce you with magnetism. They will tell you the most elaborate fantasies about your future together. Don't know about the last sentence, but I will say that one before it, I'm like, you know, I am kind of, maybe it is the, you know, like unruliness, the ruthlessness in me, but like I think that I would like to do that. Kind of like hunt somebody down, you know, like they were kind of like an enemy, and I don't know, like that thing, I kind of like appeals to me. I don't know if this is ever gonna happen, but I sense something. So anyways, Scorpio in friendship. What makes Scorpios happy? A Scorpio's happiness is rooted in their ability to feel powerful. Once again, like this does not feel like that is the type of like a good personality trait for you to have. It just feels like you're hurting and that you need this because I see myself hurting, you know, like when I'm kind of like traumatized, and that's kind of like, you know, the case. They are deeply in tune with their insatiable drive for dominance. Scorpios want to be the vital organ, a vital organ in the big throbbing heart of the world. Interesting analogy. Once they feel essential, they can sink back into their psychic depths and become excited by the prospect of creating something sacred. This is very, like, you know, intense. I don't know if I would, you know, think about friendship this way, but I mean, it's not friendship. It is, you know, like what makes them happy. So I will say that, you know, like they're deeply in tune with their insatiable drive for dominance. This is something that was much more present when I was younger. It's not that right now I'm, you know, like not. I don't know, I feel like I care way less. I can validate myself much more, so I don't really need trying to like impose myself in a situation for other people, because I can impose myself just, you know, by existing. I can kind of like you know, like I can affirm myself in whatever way I can, which, you know, is something that didn't happen when I was younger, and that's pretty much what I see here. You know, am I finding a place in the world? And they're still kind of like struggling. Okay, so are Scorpios good friends? Scorpios are very good friends. They're extremely loyal and deeply compassionate. Okay, I would like to think that I'm deeply compassionate. Although I will say that this is the type of thing that I didn't care so much when I was younger, whether I was compassionate or not. I just, you know, there were things that were right and there were things that were wrong, and I kind of like, I just stated, you know, like my claims, basically. But, you know, I did care about people and about their well-being, and so I guess, so I don't know. I would call myself compassionate. I don't know if deeply compassionate is, you know, I think that's a bit of a stretch. Also, like loyal. I don't know, because I feel like there has never really been a situation in which my loyalty has to be tested, you know, like there are situations that sometimes I fantasize about, but like real life situations in which I don't know, I can't think of a single one in which my loyalty was questioned, you know, about anything. You know, like not with my loyalty in terms of like of people, you know, when it comes to ideas and all of that, like that's different. Also, like, am I a good friend? I don't know if I am, you know. I'm not the worst friend, but I don't know if I would be the best friend. Scorpios place the highest value on what's real. They tend to be very direct because they don't have the time for fake. Okay, so I think like in my interaction with people, that's definitely true, but there are some situations where I can kind of like be a version of fake. There's that. One of their strengths is separating fact from fiction. I would like to think that that is the case, but I did literally mention yesterday that I've been kind of like fooling myself into believing certain things that are not real, so take that with a grain of salt. One of their strengths is separating fact from fiction. Scorpios are incredibly self-aware. No, I will say I am incredibly self-aware. Every mental health professional that's ever treated me has remarked that that is the case. So, yes. And this enables them to be accountable towards people they care about. Their ability to understand other people's emotions allows them to sense and respond to the shifts in your world and come to your aid before you even know you need it. I have no thoughts. Okay, so we come to the end of. Okay, so the next section is rising sign. The rising sign or ascendant is the zodiac sign that was on the eastern horizon when you were born. It's called rising sign because the zodiac constellation is rising or ascending and it's carved over the eastern horizon. Okay, so I know. Let me just. Okay, so your planet signs, like Mercury in Aquarius, are based on Earth's revolution around the sun. Your rising sign is based on the Earth's rotation on its own axis. Okay, imagine two people born. Okay, like I don't really need an explanation, to be completely honest. Okay, they're houses. I did say houses, so you know. Should I know that. Okay, so zodiac sun signs. So sun sign is, you know, the first one. which mine is Scorpio. Should I read? Leo is the second one, which I don't know exactly what it is. Let me just type it. Zodiac tree. Yeah, I literally typed zodiac tree things. I don't know, but they got it. The big tree, your core personality, and the three modalities, how you express energy. Here are the most common breakdowns. So you have these are considered the most crucial elements of your self-knowledge. Sun sign, the core self, identity, and main personality based on birth date. Moon sign, inner world, emotions, and subconscious. That one is my second one, which is Leo. And rising sun, ascendant, the social mask, external demeanor, and how others perceive you, which in my case would be Scorpio. And then there's like the three modalities of how you act. Okay, I'm kind of like losing interest, so let me just, let's see the Leo, because that is the one that has to do with your inner world, your emotions, and your subconscious, so like that's that. So the Leo, the lion, and then it says the date is a fire element, it's fixed, which I still don't know what that means, but it is saying here, ruling planet, the sun. Exudes warm creativity, a little bit vain, really big personality, wants to stand out, interested in luxury. I'm not really interested in luxury, to be completely honest. I feel like I've been seeing a shift in my demeanor towards like elegance, so it doesn't have to be luxurious, it can be something. Famous Leos, using both. Okay, I don't care. But let me think about exudes warm creativity. I don't know if exudes creativity is something I have been told before that I have exuded, so there's something there, and basically what it means, because I have like all my diverse the art that I do, so I there's been that. I don't know if warmth is one that I exude. I'm pretty polite, so people have commented the fact that I'm polite, when I'm doing that. So I don't know if warmth is true. Maybe it is. I feel like I should ask this just somebody. I should ask my mom that watch things. But you could say that, could argue that she's biased because she's my mom. There's that, a little bit vain. I will say I don't know if I'm like, because I feel like every human being on earth, that has ever existed, that does exist and ever exists, will struggle some way or another with vanity. So I don't think that, so I feel like, for this to be kind of like a big thing, you have to be not just a little bit vanity, it should be like, huge vanity, like then it would stand out. But a little bit vain, like I think we all are. Really big personality. I don't think that's the case for me. I don't think there's not really something that wants to stand out. But yeah, that one, it is true. I want to stand out. But anyways, so best career, chanteuse, B-list actor. B-list actor? Why not A-list? Like I feel like, because from what I gathered, Leos are kind of like attention whores. So like it would have to be like an A-list actor. I think that a B-list actor would kind of like ruin them. Motivational speaker. Autobiographical author, style icon. Okay, what is chanteuse? I'm not embarrassed to admit that I don't know what this word means. I've seen it before. Okay, it's French, chanteuse. That's basically the same as in French. I thought that maybe it could be something different. But about Leo, what is the personality of a Leo? Leos are bold, warm, and loving. They're also the ultimate performers. I am not the ultimate performer, to be honest. I don't even think that I'm like an average performer. Like I can, if I have like an assignment, a group presentation, like I do my job and I think I do it well. But like other things, I'm more kind of like, I like writing, which is kind of like a performance in itself. But it's kind of like behind the scenes. Although I would say I would love to be kind of like up there, but I just don't think that I have the qualifications to be that person. Okay, so am I bold? You could argue that my style is kind of bold. I'm really out there. For example, my hair is like almost grown out. But for the past decade, literally, I've been dyeing my hair. So it's kind of like and I have my tattoos and the way I dress. So I kind of like I stand out, but not so much, because. So I don't know. I would say, am I bold? I'm kind of straightforward. I'm not bold. I'm also kind of like fearless in a lot of ways. I think we talked about this before. Fearlessness is the type of thing that physical things I'm not so fearful of. It's usually like the emotional ones that get me going. But anyways, they can dazzle with a theatrical flair of a Broadway star and the charisma of a politician. I wish I had the charisma of a politician. I don't think that is true though. So I wanted that. So musical theater. They are all captivating personalities. No matter how quick if they've been introduced to a topic, they can speak eloquently about almost anything because they have such a way with words. I'm a writer, so I would like to think that I have a way with words. But if I don't. But yeah, I do think that I'm good at bullshitting my way out of things. So I don't need a whole lot of information for me to kind of like walk myself out of a situation based on that. Leos inject ambition in everything they do. I will say ambition has always been one of the core traits that I have. My ambitions, they have changed with time. You could argue that they've kind of like deflated a little bit because I used to kind of like want the world, and right now I'm satisfied with like what I can have. So you could argue that my ambition has kind of like taken a downturn, but like I'm happier than I've ever been before. So I'm just have this, okay? They are ruled by the heart. I don't think I'm ruled by the heart. I also don't think I'm ruled by my head. I'm ruled by something else. I don't know what. They are ruled by the heart. Their actions are natural and effortless because they are brash and confident and trust their instincts. I could trust my instincts more, and I feel like my confidence usually is borderline arrogance, because I feel like whenever I don't feel confident, my head kind of like makes this transition into being arrogant, and that is pretty much a lot of times where I am at. So I would say that I'm confident to myself. I will be like I'm confident, when in case I'm not confident, I'm arrogant. But it is what it is. And their actions are natural and effortless because they're brash and confident and trust their instincts. Sure, okay. Leos have, this is like would be my internal thing, so I have to think about me with myself. I will say that right now I'm not doing a really good job of trusting my instincts in terms of like what I should do. When I was younger, I was way more insecure, not insecure, but like indecisive. Like I would kind of like flip-flop between choices, and like this past decade, this past few years, I've been much more like confident in what I'm doing, and I'm making choices that are more assertive as well. So there's that. Leos have an unrelenting appetite for growth that is easily satiated by the praise of others. When they're hurting, it shows. I would say that like it does show when I'm hurting, but it's mostly because I allow myself to show it. When I was younger, I really suppressed those things, so you couldn't see that I was sad. So I am right now letting myself show my emotions. But yeah, anyways, I will say that praise from others is something that affects me positively, usually more than I wish it did. I just said that I am very much like able to kind of like affirm myself, and that is true, but it's still like an external positive word. Like it means something, particularly when it comes from somebody who means it, not just somebody who's like or because for example, thinking about my books, you can show respect and admiration for the fact that I've written a book, and I will believe you because there is something hard, which if you were to read it, it says something, I'll probably not believe it as much, because I would be kind of I'll be kind of like, is this really it? I don't know why I even brought that up. Leos have an unrelenting appetite for growth that is okay. When they're hurting them, they will use their anger as a proactive wall to shield their vulnerabilities. Okay, I will say that this is a sentence that I can see happening in my head, not so much these days, but when I was younger. Like my most active emotion that I experienced, for example, back when I was 18, 19, 20, 21, was anger. And that anger is pretty much like what today I look back at it and I'm like, okay, like that anger came from the fact that like I was being hurt, that like I was threatened, that something was happening, which is not so much the case these days. Like I've been able to kind of like transition into a life where I can kind of like just, instead of like anger, I kind of like experience the other emotions, and I don't linger in them for too long. I just feel them and then I let them go away, which is pretty much what I think we should all do. Because I think that you're being angry about something is definitely something, but you have to think about more constructive ways of doing things other than just being angry. Okay, they want to be perceived as unbreakable because they're scared of admitting vulnerability, needing things from other people, or being complete. Ouch. Like this one is, it literally describes yeah, like myself internally. I wanted to kind of like, I projected this version of strength, which basically was unbreakability. It was just me, not, like nothing. I kind of like, it's like me withstanding things. So like, it's pretty much me being told things they're really bad, me having to witness things that were really bad, and kind of like, where I was kind of like putting out there was like nothing. I was completely unmovable, and that was my version of strength back when I was younger. Because I was scared of admitting that I was vulnerable, that things hurt, that I needed things from other people, or that there was something wrong with me. Particularly considering for how many years when I was a kid and a teenager, I was told that there was something wrong with me, something that I needed to change. So kind of like, feeling, kind of like acknowledging that was something that affected me. Like that was, like that felt like, they were winning. That's what I did, and they couldn't win because, I was going to win. It was a very one-sided battle because I was in the battle, and like everybody who's ever hurt me, like they didn't know that I was struggling. So it was kind of like very, very frustrating because there wasn't really ever a resolution to kind of like that. Okay, so what are Leo's weaknesses? A Leo's bad sides appear when their admirable character traits cross over in success. They can be perceived as overbearing, but this is due to their hyper-presence and warmth. I don't think this is something I've ever struggled with, particularly not the part of like, being unbearable, but like specifically, I mean, you could argue that sometimes, like when I'm a little bit depressed, sometimes manic, I kind of like tell my parents I love them a little too much, or a little too often, and I hug them, but like they never really displayed it. They don't dislike it, I think. So there's that. Leos have a reputation for bragging a lot. I don't have a reputation for bragging a lot because I basically don't brag. Even if I feel something, I don't know, I think that it may be something that you're taught that is kind of rude, because I mean, you can talk about your accomplishments without bragging, but specifically, I don't think I don't really brag. So there's that. They see bragging as sharing. Sharing is their accomplishments with others make Leos feel connected, and they expect the same in return from their friends. Yeah, this is not a series of emotions that I relate to, really. They want to be celebrated, but they are equally happy to celebrate you. One thing, I don't know. I think I would like to think that happy to celebrate the people in my life for their accomplishments, for what they achieved. I don't know. I think, for example, my brother graduated high school last year, and we were all very happy for him. I was happy of his accomplishment. He's graduated high school and has, a technical degree in, in IT stuff. I say as if I didn't, attend, college for computer engineering for years. But honestly, that is one of those things that I really don't like to bring up because I don't remember shit. And then people ask for your help, and I have no help to give them. Like my understanding of like the electronics is very, pretty much the same with somebody who did not attend school for, computer engineering for a few years. A couple. Leos have a reputation for to celebrate with you. Leos like to feel important. They don't necessarily want to be worshipped. Okay, so that is interesting because I don't really necessarily feel the urge to feel important. I want to have, like, for example, I want my accomplishments to be kind of like valued, but I don't have to feel important for me to kind of, although to be fair, like, you could argue that some of my fantasies involve pretty much that, or like me, being able to say something and like that thing I said mattering because people care about it, that means you're important. So I guess that there is a connection there. But they don't necessarily want to be worshipped. This is something that my answer today is different from my answer what it's been like a decade ago or 5 years ago, because I kind of being worshipped these days, but when I was younger I really wanted it, even if I didn't want to admit it. I think this is one of those things that that led to a lot of conflict when I was in church, because you're supposed to just worship God, and I was like, I kind of wanted to be worshipped a little bit as well. I think it's unfair that somebody gets to do that and we don't, like we do things, we create things, but yeah, they just want to be recognized for their authentic selves. The difference between admiration and worship is subtle, but it's the difference between a Leo being preoccupied with themselves or being focused on the good of the people they care about. Interesting. I will say that the difference between admiration and worship. I feel like what I wanted was admiration, but my life was kind of like falling apart, so I didn't really have it. So then suddenly you kind of like try to compensate. Your brain tries to compensate, and suddenly you want worship. But yeah, so there's that. Leos want to be the center of the universe. They want to be rewarded for being the best and the brightest. Okay, I do see myself a little bit in this. It's something that's not so much an issue, but when I was in high school and the years after, like that was something I struggled with. The fact that I wasn't the best and the brightest. In my head I wanted to be. They want to be given special treatment, but they also want to feel deserving of it. Oh, that's a good way of putting it. Because I didn't. If you ask me like, do you ever want special treatment? I'll be like, no. But I did want a different treatment, which would come from the fact that I deserve a different treatment. So there is something here. Do I want to be this? Because if you ask me this directly, do you want to be the center of the universe? I'll be like, no, of course not. But like deep inside, I'll probably be like, yes, I want you. Please make me the center of the universe. I don't know. What do Leos hate the most? Leos hate being possessed, bossed around. They are very much in charge of their own destiny. Leos are perpetually wounded by what they perceive to be the acts of betrayal and abandonment. Oh my god. This one just read me, to be completely honest. Their pride is a sword that they wield to protect their autonomy. Oh. Damn. Like, this one really gets me. Oh my god. Yeah. I mean, it's very general, kind of like generic. I can see like most people kind of like relating to this to some extent, but like as far as like sentences go, like this ones, they kind of like really mean something, to me. But yeah, so the whole thing of like the whole importance of independence and autonomy for me. I talked about it like many times, and how like whenever I sense that is being threatened, it really fucks me up. It really kind of like it is pretty much what, and also like the things that they said, they were partially wounded by what they perceived to be acts of betrayal and abandonment. Kind of crazy, because the important thing here is that they perceive, because there are so many things that I had to overcome, in terms of like my traumas, that they did not come from a place of like, anger, did not come from a place of anybody trying to hurt me, but they did still affect me that way. So it's kind of harder sometimes for you to overcome those, because if you have some, for example, if I have some grievance with my parents, I can talk to them about it, and then we're gonna have a conversation, we will apologize to each other, and then like we're gonna get a bottom line there. But some of these things, like I don't really have access to the people who said that, and I know for a fact that those people, a lot of times people say things because they don't think that what they're saying applies to you, but they still say it and it still applies. So there's the whole thing. And basically the connection that was made is that those things, like those words that you hear sometimes when you're a kid, like whenever you hear words, they're similar to those words, like after that, like they have this effect. They kind of like attacked you, So but yeah, so betrayal and abandonment, which is interesting, because for the longest time I'll be like, I don't give a fuck about abandonment, like fuck that, I don't need anybody else. But the truth is that I did care, because there's a difference between being kind of like alone and being lonely. And I've always been very adamant that like I'm alone, I'm not lonely. But there were points where I was lonely, because it felt like it was just like me against the rest of the world. And that's not how things work. I have people who have my back, I'm not alone, but it takes a while for you to kind of like deprogram some type of trauma that you have. And that's basically kind of like the case here. But yeah, and also their pride is a sword that they wield to protect their autonomy. It's so real. Damn, like I think it might be one of like the most real things that I've read, from this website today. But anyways, because their sense of honor is so intense, Leos hold both themselves and others at a very high standard. They can feel deeply wounded when someone breaks the code. There is an ingrained need for everyone to acknowledge and validate their existence. This can lead to them being labeled as narcissistic or absolutist, or absolutist behavior that borders on the absurd. Okay, this one also is kind of like interesting, because like, what exactly do I have a very acute sense of honor? I mean, there are the things that I value as being kind of like really important and the right thing to do, and I think that you should go against those things. I am kind of like I'm labeling you kind of like a person who is kind of like far away from my ideals. I don't know. I judge you basically, and I think that you kind of like can be a bad person, you know, when depending on what you're doing. And you know, like you could argue that like you can only say somebody is a bad person based on their actions, but I do think that, you know, like their words and their thoughts. I'm not saying that you should be kind of like judged for, you know, not judged, but you shouldn't be kind of like prosecuted for things that you think or that you say. But those things that you say, I think like they do lead you to kind of like understand, you know, kind of like how, you know, that person works, you know, and that's kind of important. You know, when it comes to kind of like who am I going to associate with, like who am I going to live behind, you know, and all of that. But anyways, so I think that in a certain way, my sense of honor is kind of intense, and I think that like my frustrations have come, you know, in the past from the fact that I had this kind of like perception, and then other people they didn't really live up to that, you know. They kind of like they fell short on the morality scale. Anyways, but also like it's the interesting thing of like me being kind of like labeled a narcissist. I don't know. Narcissistic or absolutist behavior, borderline absurd. I think that there's been points in time where you could definitely argue that that was me. You know, I think sometimes I might have gotten too strict, you know, the ways that I was kind of like holding myself in the world. And it's one of those things that it's kind of like it's quicksand, because I was also judging myself, and the more I moved, I was trying to prove that that was not really me, the more I drowned, and there's nothing really kind of like, you know, there's nothing to kind of like, you know, to save me. There's nobody to save me. There was no rope that I could pull and, you know, like save myself. I was just kind of drowning, and that was that, you know. And that's kind of like the thing that sucked the most, because I was drowning, but the people they were not, you know. The people who I was kind of like holding on to like those standards and who were fucking up, like they were not, you know, in any way, shape or form kind of like affected. It was just me. Leos hate being told what to do, but if you can get them to listen, they can usually be persuaded, especially if you make them feel like it was what they wanted all along. Kind of manipulative here, but you know, is that the case? I don't think anybody has ever tried to convince me like that. I would like to think that I can be swayed, you know, like that I can be fooled like that, but you know, I'm not going to. I might, and that's life, and that's kind of that. But you know, it is one of those things that it's kind of like a strategy that I would try to use with other people. And right now, I'm like, I can't be bothered. You know, I'm just like, I'm going to do my part. But you know, just that sometimes your part is you can do more, you can do better. Like that's, you know, like a reality. But it's hard. You know, it's kind of, because sometimes like if you're just like so hopeless, because like what can I, you know, like this individual that I am, like what can I do, you know, like what can I accomplish? And it's not much, you know. And I look at my surroundings and I'm like, okay, how, look at all this shit, like look at this mess. I try my best to make things better, and I failed, you know. Like what hope is there for me to do this? If I can do this to the people who are close to me, if I can fix them, like how can I fix anyone else? You know, how can I improve anything? Okay. But they always secretly resent that they didn't reach this conclusion alone. Leos don't like to be told to do things, and they especially don't like being forced. I relate to that. I talked about before how I kind of like am happy, you know, about the fact that in many ways I could, you know, when I think about the past, I made mistakes by doing things on my own terms, as opposed to kind of like doing something else because somebody told me to do. Naturally, you could argue that I could have, you know, I might have been better off if I had just done what people wanted me to do. But I do pride myself in the fact that, like, yes, I did things on my own terms. So yeah, I don't like being forced to do anything. Okay, so Leo in sex, love, and romance. This is the most relevant to Leo, Venus, and Mars, although Leo suns may identify with some traits. I'm not a Leo sun, I'm a Leo, what's the second one? Leo moon. Okay, so how to seduce a Leo. Scroll back on their social media and accidentally like one of their first posts. This will immediately get them thinking about you. Okay. Commission a wall of fame plaque and install it outside their front door. What? This is insane. This is fucking insane. Put in reflective contacts so they can see their own reflection while they stare into your eyes. This is like, this is weird, right? Like, this is weird. Oh my god. What are Leos attracted to? Should I kind of like continue reading this, because you know my thing is moon, and I don't know. Okay, so Leos are naturally. Okay, I'm going to. Okay, so Leo in friendship. I'm gonna read the one. I'm gonna skip the romance one. As friends, Leos are attentive, loyal, and generous. They always feel the need to give more than they receive. As one of the, am I like that? I don't know if I'm like that. As one of the most playful and luxury-loving signs, they treat you the way they treat themselves, and will spontaneously do nice things for you just because they feel like it. They're not willing to keeping track of turns or even splits. If you give a little reason to feel special, they will shower you with the same level of attention, affection, and praise. Friendship means everything to them, and if you have a problem, they will drop everything and come help you. Yeah, I don't think that is me. I was thinking about this, you know, the other day. By the other day, I mean yesterday, because, you know, a friend of my mom's friend from church, they stole her phone, and they were basically kind of like, went to her contacts, and they were scanning at her, you know, like, they were kind of like sending this scanning link. And a part of me was like, you know, if a friend of mine just like, you know, they asked me for money, would I give it to them? And honestly, I don't know if I would, because I'm not making that much money. But like, you could argue that like if I cared, I would. But I don't know, like, do I know anybody that's like two people, you know, if they ask me money, I'll be like, okay, I know this person is going to pay me back. Because everybody else, like, I have no connection to them, you know. Leos are very proud of their and value their owner. If you hurt a Leo's feelings, they will make you very aware of it with the silent treatment. I don't know if I'm a silent treatment person. I don't think I've ever given anyone the silent treatment. I don't think I've ever a situation to do that. You have to kind of like take into account that I'm not the most sociable person, so there's not that much there. They can also be vindictive and hold on to resentment for a long time. Okay, now I relate to that a little bit more. Even if you make them mad 5 years ago, they'll still remember it. Yeah, they remember it the way they want to remember it. They'll hold on to their version of the story, and you just have to accept that this is their way of forgiving you. Okay, no, I need compensation. You know, I'm not talking about money, but like I need, you know, like an effort to be made to compensate me for, you know, mistakes. Okay, so why are Leos so lonely? Oh, I didn't know that. To Leos, loneliness is a captive state. It binds them to the cage of their own desire. They've got a hole inside of them that they try to fill with love, attention, and approval. They want to be loved for who they are. They want genuine connections to take a long time to learn but take a long time to learn how to initiate them. They're always searching for meaning. I will say that I do relate to this last two sentences. I struggle with kind of like initiating, you know, connection and establishing connection as well. There's that. Leos make lots of good friends, but they are so good at keeping them but they are not so good at keeping them or deepening those relationships. The problem is that they are able to form superficial connections with their ample charm. It can be hard for them to show the vulnerability that deeper relationships require. While they are great at communicating with the world, they're not really great at communicating their thoughts and feelings. I think that I'm kind of like the opposite. You know, I'm kind of like, I can communicate my thoughts and feelings very well. But, you know, when you kind of have to talk to people in general, like, kind of fail a little bit. To connect with people, they have to open up about their own emotions, and that's something they're not comfortable doing. What they don't realize is that their emotional expression can be the very catalyst for developing deep connections. Leos can feel the need for companionship, but they don't know how to create space for it to grow. Oh, I relate to this, because as I mentioned before, I'm kind of like open to trying different, you know, things in terms of like relationships, but I don't even know where to start them from. You know, I'm kind of, you know, stuck that way. Okay, so they don't understand that friendship requires constant work, and that you get what you put in. That is true, and I think that is kind of like maybe the part where I fail sometimes, because I'm not putting in as much effort as I possibly maybe could have. But there's also the fact that it's like, who exactly am I going to be distributing this effort, you know, to? Because usually the people that have been coming to my life, like, I don't care that much about, and you could argue that like you have to work on them, you know, for them to get to that point. But I don't know, these people, like, I don't really care about having them in my life like that. you know. They're the type of person who says I'll call you and then never calls because they're always very busy. Eh, Not saying. Of course, Leos are doomed to a life of loneliness. They just have to learn how to be vulnerable. They have to find a way to be friends with people without seeing others as only a source of attention. So that's it. That is, the Leo, and my three things are, and there's like many more things. I'm looking at here. There's the modalities. So there's the cardinal signs, which are the initiators, the fixed signs, the stabilizers, the mutable signs, adapters, and 3 evolutionary states. So there's this kind of reminds me of the Enneagram. But yeah, so my laptop is like low on battery, and I'm gonna wrap this up right here. So it was fun. I think that ultimately astrology is kind of like the same for, I think it was a tweet that said that like MBTI types, personality types are like astrology for people with LinkedIn profiles, and like that's so true. And I really like reading about the personality types, both Myers-Briggs, but also Enneagram. So I think that I might get back to this at some point. It is kind of like the starting point for you to work on yourself. And I don't know why I was so judgmental of this show for so long, because like I'm not out here judging people because of their religious beliefs. So like, why would I judge somebody for liking astrology? It is a shortcoming from my part, from projecting more. I'm projecting. Do I believe in astrology? Still no. I didn't expect that to change. I don't think there's anything that can change my mind in believing. It's not only astrology, but like religion. The belief in higher powers, the belief that there is something like that is moving us in a certain way. And I'm pretty sure that that's not going to change. But I'm kind of like past the days where I was kind of a little mean to people because of their beliefs. I was never really too mean, but I was very particularly when they said something aggravating about me, and I was saying like there were times where I would just say some very mean things. For example, there's been moments where I've referred to people's to the God people believed in as their imaginary friends, and that didn't go well. Like that got people upset. But that's kind of like what I was going for, because it was not like I was the only one in the wrong. Like they were also kind of like attacking me and my beliefs, or like they're off. So, but I'm not justifying myself. Like I shouldn't have. I want to be a patient person, so I also don't want to be affected by things that people have to say. That's the whole thing, that this video is about. It's like, okay, so if I say this, I might think that I believe in astrology, so what? If I say something, people might believe I believe in whatever God, so what? I don't owe anybody shit, like nobody owes me shit, and I can only control myself. So that's pretty much what I'm doing. So anyways, bye.